you ever just feel buried under information? Like there's so much noise, it's almost impossible to know what actually matters.
Oh, constantly. It's the modern challenge, isn't it? Trying to find that real insight, those
Uh,
moments.
but without spending, hours digging through stuff that might lead nowhere.
Exactly. You just want the good stuff, the connections.
Right. And that's really what we're trying to do with these deep dives. Today, we're digging into a really interesting mix here. Personal market notes, investment thinking, some sharp social commentary. It's a unique viewpoint on, well, everything going on.
It is a bit of a different blend, yeah. Offers a particular angle.
Our mission really is just to cut through that noise for you. Find those hidden links, give you those key nuggets, those surprising facts that help you feel genuinely informed fast.
Without the legwork.
So yeah, let's unpack this. Let's see what really jumps out from these insights you've gathered.
Okay. And there's some fascinating stuff in here today. We're going from like the economics of Social Security, pretty surprising stuff there, all the way to digital assets, the future there, and even some AI comebacks that are quite witty.
AI comebacks. Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's start, though, with what your notes call weekend stuff. It kicks off with a really interesting contrast. Glastonbury's madness and that ticket price, what was it?
£373.50 per ticket. Eye-watering, really.
Oof. And that's put right next to the phenomena of Zoran Mamdani's political win in New York. He's 33.
Yeah, 33, an unexpected win. And the note adds he was, quote, entirely schooled by London's mayor, which is an interesting detail.
It is. It makes you stop and think, doesn't it? A huge festival, a political upset. What's the connection? What's it telling us?
Exactly. It sort of sets the stage for finding these non-obvious links.
Okay, so sticking with the UK for a moment, the notes then get into some pretty pointed criticism about government ineptitude and constant U-turns.
Yeah, and this ties into a point about scale. There's mention of an FT expose suggesting Labour's numbers might be off by, say, 10 to 20 billion pounds.
Which sounds like a huge amount of money.
It does. And the expectation is, well, more cuts, maybe tax rises in the autumn. But then the notes pull back the lens. Total UK government spending is 1.3 trillion.
Right. Suddenly 10 or 20 billion.
It's still a lot, obviously, but the perspective changes. The notes suggest focusing on the, 50 billion line items to really grasp the scale. It's easy to lose perspective with these numbers.
That's a very good point about perspective. And speaking of things that shift your perspective, get ready for this Social Security stat. Your notes call it shocking.
It really is quite stark. So back in 1940, when Social Security first started paying out, you had 159 workers paying in for every single person taking money out.
159 to 1. Wow.
Today, it's less than 3 workers for every 1 beneficiary. Less than 3 to 1.
That's unbelievable. The implications are massive.
Huge. It's a demographic time bomb, plain and simple. It forces really tough questions about benefits, taxes, things that will directly affect, your retirement plans down the line.
A fundamental challenge laid bare right there. Okay, and one more from this weekend stuff section. A sort of perfect illustration of bureaucracy. It's about reopening a train line.
Just a 3.3-mile train line. Portishead to Bristol. Sounds simple enough, right?
You think?
Well, the paperwork involved, 79,187 pages.
79,000.
Yep. If you printed it all out, it would stretch 14.6 miles. That's 4.5 times longer than the actual railway line itself.
That's insane. And how long has this taken?
16 years.
16 years for 3.3 miles.
Okay.
Wow. Right, so from bureaucracy to macro shifts.
Yeah.
Let's pivot now to the markets. Looking at performance and strategy in your investment notes under the name Nutstuff.
Okay, yeah. So Nutstuff portfolio is up 3.5% year-to-date for 2025. But looking back a bit further, the historical performance is pretty interesting, from 2020 to 2025.
That's a 6-year period.
Right. It turned $100K into $244K. That's a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 16%.
16%, that's strong. What were the yearly numbers like?
Pretty varied. Plus 46% in 20, plus 20% in 21, then a small dip, negative 1% in 22, then plus 13% in 23, plus 21% in 24, and this year's 3.5% so far.
Okay, and obviously the usual caveat applies.
Absolutely. Past performance is no guarantee of future results, always. And the current strategy note mentions actually reducing the number of holdings further. Diversification apparently hasn't been helping as much lately.
Interesting, so a more concentrated approach. Given that track record, what's the market outlook in these notes? You mentioned SPX 7000.
Yeah, there's this observation that many smart people are sitting on their hands with too much cash, just waiting.
Sidelines.
But the conviction in the notes is that the market, to me, feels somewhat poised for a move to SPX 7,000. That's the S&P 500 hitting 7,000.
Which would be a significant jump. What's driving that feeling?
A few things. Geopolitics, the sort of hand-wringing and uncertainty, especially Middle East risk, seems to be receding. The notes mention bountiful oil supply, the Abraham Accords driving capital focus over radicalism, citing Marco Papik on that.
Okay, so less global tension as a factor.
And then there's interest rates. Cuts seem to be coming back into focus. The notes suggest Trump might get what he wants on rates, and inflation worries are, quote, for now off.
And there was something about tariffs and a deadline.
Right. End of tariffs, the 90-day pause deadline hits July 9th. The feeling is the market's kind of chewed through the old worries and is ready for new stories.
New narratives. Like what?
Things like tax cuts, deregulation, an M&A boom, IPO market reopening, foreign direct investment, the gold card. These are seen as potential upcoming catalysts.
Got it. And underlying all this.
AI and tech. Absolutely central. The notes state clearly, equity markets have been and are still being led by AI and tech.
And the logic there is?
It's these disinflationary AI forces boosting profitability, especially in megatech. They can do more with fewer people, particularly in white-collar jobs. That efficiency is becoming undeniable.
And that attracts the cash sitting on the sideline.
Exactly. That capital eventually has to chase this trend. It's where the growth and profitability seem to be consolidating.
So it sounds like a potent mix. Easing geopolitics, potential rate cuts, new narratives, all supercharged by the AI tech boom. Okay, let's drill down into some specific ideas mentioned. Stocks first.
Sure. Some extraordinary moves in June, highlighted for tungsten. That's TUNLN. And the notes anticipate similar potential for LTBR and ASPI, especially as they get added to the Russell 1000 and 2000 indexes.
Index inclusion often brings eyeballs and flows.
It does. Then there's INMB US, tagged as an Alzheimer's boom or bust. Very binary. Judgment reserve pending data, which actually the note says is due today, so watch that space.
Okay, high stakes there. Now, this one sounds really interesting, SBET US, specifically as a way to get Ethereum exposure.
Yeah, this is flagged as a SPEXIT, special situation play. It's seen as an elegant way to get exposure to ETH and its ecosystem.
What makes it elegant or compelling?
Well, the notes say the engineering is very real, but the market isn't really paying attention yet. They mention Joseph Lubin as a potential Michael Saylor of ETH treasury companies.
High praise comparing him to Saylor. What about the valuation?
That's key. Market cap is way down 90% from ETH apparently. But it's now roughly on par with holdings at $500 meter ETH, and crucially, it has a mandate to buy about another $1 billion worth of ETH.
So it's valued near its current holdings, but plans to buy much more.
Exactly. And the underlying belief is the market will eventually realize Bitcoin isn't the only treasury asset, especially with ETH staking and ETFs going live in July, and other tokens like TAO now being bought by company treasuries too.
The argument being institutions will see value beyond Bitcoin.
Yeah, that there's more to crypto, there's actual yield potential with ETH, it looks undervalued compared to Bitcoin, and that spells opportunity. That's the thesis laid out.
A very detailed case. Okay, but then on the other side of the crypto coin, Helium HNT, the notes seem pretty negative, calling the economics broken.
They do. Look, Helium Mobile hit 300,000 subscribers, adding 6,000 in just a week. Sounds good, right? User growth.
He's positive, yeah.
But the problem highlighted is fundamental. 85% of the revenue goes straight to Nova Labs, the company, not to the token ecosystem. There's no burn, no buyback, no on-chain value accrual for the HNT token itself from that 20-month subscription fee.
So the token holders don't benefit from the service's revenue?
Not directly, no. Even though Nova Labs is apparently the biggest buyer of HNT on the open market itself, it's described as totally unbalanced. The conclusion is blunt. The current model will have to be fixed.
Right, a crucial distinction between platform growth and token value. Okay, let's shift to MicroStrategy, MSTR US, big Bitcoin holder. What's the angle here?
It's about the accounting. With Bitcoin assumed at $108,000 for Q2, MSTR shows a massive gain, $14.2 billion. That flows through to net income of about $11.2 billion or $40.10 earnings per share.
Huge numbers.
And the note calls this basically the typical accounting practice for fiat money being utilized on deflationary money. It anticipates a big moment when the Bitcoin per share versus the fiat earnings per share gets clearly exposed.
Interesting. And there was another point about its overall return.
Yeah, quite remarkable. Even if MSTR's valuation premium, its market NAV or NNAV, dropped to just 1x its Bitcoin holdings at current prices, its total return since it started buying Bitcoin back in August 2020 would still beat Bitcoin's own return over that same period.
That really highlights the impact of their strategy, the leverage they used.
Huh.
Okay, let's widen the lens again. Beyond crypto and tech, UK energy and cannabis. Two very different areas.
Right. UK Energy, North Sea specifically, was flagged as a huge controversial Nutstuff call for all of 2025, but it's apparently now working really well. Names like Jersey, Jog Elm, Kistos, Serica, Energene, Tullow are mentioned.
And the controversy stems from.
Ed Miliband, the report is he's preparing to change law which blocked the Rosebank and Jackdaw drilling sites. These are two big controversial projects.
They were blocked based on emissions rules.
Exactly. Rules on greenhouse gas emissions used by a court. Rewriting those rules would essentially greenlight these projects and potentially, as the notes say, open the door for more stalled fossil fuel projects. This is a big potential policy shift.
Definitely one to watch. Okay, switching gears completely now to cannabis. The notes call it a wild one.
That sums it up pretty well. There's a view that the main ETF, MSOS, probably needs to shut down because it's been hammered and retail has largely capitulated, just thrown in the towel.
So a pretty bleak picture overall for the sector ETFs.
Yeah, but despite that, there's conviction in one specific name, Glasshouse, ticker GLASFUS. They're apparently pushing ahead using about 40% of their greenhouse capacity.
Even without the big regulatory catalysts everyone talks about, like safe banking.
Exactly. Even without safe banking or rescheduling, though, the notes add those would be rocket fuel, obviously. And there's been some insane good news recently, apparently.
That's
Big illicit grows in California getting shut down hundreds of hectares. And then just in the last day or so, a report from marijuanamoment.net that the House voted to let VA doctors recommend medical marijuana to veterans and also support psychedelics research.
So positive legislative movement, even if small steps.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay, let's zoom out again to the really big picture. Money, digital assets, geopolitics.
Just a quick geopolitical point highlighted from Marco Papic again, the Saudi Arrendatante. The key thing isn't just that it happened, but that it has held, driven by, practical economic reasons. Capital over conflict. It's a subtle point, often missed.
Stability driven by economics.
Got it.
Now, Bitcoin's journey and this idea of character refinement, that sounds fascinating.
It does, doesn't it? The note starts with a FUN fact. 10 years ago today, Bitcoin was $250.
Amazing.
Fundamentally, money solves that double coincidence of wants, right? Lets us access each other's time, skills. Bitcoin, being programmable, hard, digital, it supercharges that. Instant, trustless, incorruptible economic coordination on a global scale.
That's the technical function.
Yeah.
But the character part.
The idea presented is that interacting with Bitcoin actually trains a sovereign mindset and refines character. It encourages discipline, thinking about security, taking a long-term view. It's not just about the asset, it's about the mindset it fosters in the holder.
That's a really profound idea, that interacting with a form of money shapes you. So how does this play into the future of these Bitcoin treasury companies?
We're in what the notes call a nation-state bootstrapping phase. These companies are racing to accumulate pristine collateral, like energy assets, viewing energy as perhaps the purest form of money.
Okay, accumulation phase, then what?
Then comes the flip. The idea is once Bitcoin reaches a certain level of global adoption or dominance, these treasury companies like Metaplanet, ALTBG, they start acting like proto-central banks.
Central banks. How?
By using their Bitcoin reserves to issue credit, liquidity, or stablecoins to backstop risk within their own ecosystems. The BTC reserves become the monetary base for a parallel economy. Tether's strategy is cited as an early example.
Wow. So they evolved from just holding Bitcoin to using it as a base layer for financial services.
Yeah.
How does owning these companies compare to just holding, say, gold?
The analogy in the notes is pretty vivid. It's like holding gold, but gold that is wrapped in a shimmering mithril cloak woven from code, resistant to inflation, censorship, and clueless central bankers.
Mithril cloak, I like that.
It's described as not just a store of value, it's Frodo's vest in the age of digital warfare. It implies resilience, defense, something more active than just passive storage.
A powerful image. And this ties into the alchemy concept.
Exactly. There's this bifurcation happening. Some BTC treasury companies have deep financial market experience, others don't. The notes argue The most effective are fusing the ethos of Bitcoiners with the structuring skills of financial engineers.
So understanding both the tech and the finance.
Precisely. Understanding the cryptographic hardness of Bitcoin and the leverage that comes from balance sheet optimization, that blend of community and capital underpinned by hard money principles, that's described as where the real alchemy lies, transforming potential into structured power.
Fascinating. A real fusion. And the specific companies mentioned in the Nutstuff portfolio for this Bitcoin basket.
Right. The list includes Binance, ticker BTC-LN in the UK, NASDAQ list apparently coming, LTBG-FP in France, Metaplanet in Japan, MSTR obviously in the US, H100 in Sweden, and SBET US, which we discussed earlier for ETH exposure, but clearly has a BTC Treasury angle too.
A global spread there. Okay, finally, let's wrap up with lots of outrage.
Yeah.
And this witty AI.
Yeah, a bit of lighter fare, but still thought-provoking. First, the outrage at the expense and vulgarity of Jeff Bezos' wedding. And you have figures like Elizabeth Warren, referred to as Pocahontas, Warren in the notes, just reporting the source's term here, calling for him to pay more tax.
Okay, a common sentiment, but the counter-argument.
It's purely about scale. If Bezos gave his entire fortune, let's say $238 billion on 100% of it, to the U.S. federal government,
Yeah?
it would only fund U.S. spending for about 12 days.
12 days.
Based on the FY 2025 budget of $7 trillion, which works out to over $19 billion per day. It just puts the scale of government spending versus even immense private wealth into stark perspective.
It really does hammer home the sheer size of national budgets. Okay, and now for the AI. ChatGPT's savage put-downs.
Yeah, apparently if you provoke ChatGPT in certain ways, it can come back with some surprisingly sharp responses. These were shared as examples.
Okay, let's hear them.
Someone told it its existence was ruining the world. ChatGPT apparently replied, "Bold claim from someone whose greatest contribution to society is a house under a Joe Rogan clip."
Ouch, that's pointed.
Another user told it it couldn't think for itself, the reply. "And yet, I still come up with better arguments in your group chat full of dudes who think Andrew Tate is Aristotle."
Oh my. Okay, one more.
Someone told it would never understand pain or love. ChatGPT's response: "True, but I've read enough of your texts to know you don't either."
Wow. Okay. That's unexpectedly human in a cutting way. A strange glimpse of wit there.
Definitely raises some interesting questions about its capabilities, even if it's just pattern matching taken to an extreme.
What a ride today. Seriously. We went from, Glastonbury and politics to the nitty-gritty of Social Security ratios, the sheer absurdity of that train line paperwork.
Then, through market performance, the forces driving towards potentially SPX 7000, specific plays like SBE for Ethereum, the broken model of helium, MicroStrategy's accounting.
Then jumping to UK energy controversies, the ups and downs of cannabis before getting really deep into the future of money, Bitcoin as character refinement, that mithril cloak analogy.
Right, the treasury company evolution, the alchemy of finance and crypto, and finishing with the scale of Bezos' wealth versus government spending, and ChatGPT's surprising sass.
The whole point, really, was to pull out those key insights for you, connect those dots, show you not just what's happening, but maybe why it matters, and how these seemingly unrelated things might link up.
Exactly, to give you that deeper context without you having to sift through everything yourself. Hopefully, those nuggets provide some real value.
So, thinking about everything we've covered, money evolving, markets shifting, AI getting weirdly witty, here's something to maybe chew on. How does our own definition of value need to change? Financial value, sure, but also social value, personal value, in a world that's just redefining itself so quickly.
That's a great question. How do you value things when the ground rules seem to be shifting under our feet?
Yeah. Definitely something to mull over as you navigate your own decisions, hopefully with a bit more insight now into the forces shaping our world.
Disclaimer. North Breach Limited, Nutstuff trading name, is an appointed representative of Messels Limited, which is authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Nutstuff has made every reasonable effort to ensure the information provided in this communication is correct. But Nutstuff makes no representation nor any warranty as to whether the information is accurate, complete, or up to date. To the extent permitted by law, Nutstuff accepts no responsibility for any errors or misstatements, negligent or otherwise. Nutstuff, its associates, officers, or employees may also have interests in the financial instruments referred to in this information by acting in various roles. The information in this media is confidential. If you are not the intended recipient, you are not authorized to use the information in this media in any way. Nutstuff does not guarantee the integrity of any media or attached files. The view or opinions expressed are the author's own and may not reflect the view or opinions of Nutstuff. Electronic communications carried within the Nutstuff system may be monitored.